James is talking about this Collision of Empires by A.D. Harvey.
Yeah.
And he's going to continue to talk to you about that.
So when I was a kid, they had Harvey comics. Here's some more Harvey comics, only they're tragic comic. So I don't know if you caught much of what I was saying in the lead up to this, but one of his problems in this book, so he's talking about England in the Napoleonic Wars and the preceding Revolutionary Wars, where the revolution spread out of France and was trying to spread the gospel truth into the rest of Europe. And I'm afraid those skunks they were trying to bring the reign of terror into the rest of Europe. I'm not a big fan of emperors and kings, but our reign of terror in France was worse than those emperors and kings. And the English were right to put their foot on those idiots, help contribute in putting their foot. And then definitely when it comes to Napoleon. And then the English in World War I and World War II. I was talking about this guy, his formulation for David Lloyd George. I don't think it's original, but he likes using it. The Welsh Wizard. The Welsh Wizard. And his reading seems to be of David Lloyd George in World War I. He wanted to fight. And he'd given up on being something like a pacifist in the Boer War. Now, I'm not sure whether he was a pacifist in the Boer War. He might have been a realist. He might have been more sympathetic towards the Boers. There's a difference between the Boer War and World War I. In the Boer War, the English were trying to maintain something that they, part of something that they styled as their empire. Okay? In World War I, the British were trying to keep the German Empire from moving into a place that they had no right to control, France. And not just that place, Belgium. You see the difference? A.D. Harvey, if you're still alive, if you're listening, and if you haven't swallowed your tongue with fury at what I've been saying, there's a difference. Lloyd George wasn't necessarily a pacifist in the Boer War. He just thought it was a bad idea, maybe bad taste or bad form for the English to be thumping down on the Boers. Now, as far as I'm concerned, when we look at how the Boers turned out to, what they turned out to be, the kind of political system they increasingly developed, the English were actually relatively right in the Boer War. The English were better than the Boers. The English handled subject nations better than the Boers did. It was a matter not so much of the English pounding down on their subjects, the Boers. It was the English pounding down on the Boers who were pounding down on subject peoples like the Bantu in the southern part of Africa. Huge difference. Now, in World War I, this guy talks about, oh, and this is just standard. It seems to be on the left wing, maybe other places. Oh, you know, like the Germans in World War II, they were getting reports of some sort of sifting through German Nazi censorship. And, oh, they're saying we're doing war crimes. Well, they said the same thing in World War I in Belgium. It was a war crime, or it should have been, morally, if not legally, or ethically, if not legally, for Germany to invade Belgium, because Belgium was a neutral country. It's about the first thing they did in World War I, at least in the West. No, the Brits were right to get in there and defend Belgium. Were they wanting a fight like this guy? No, they weren't. Some people were, I suppose. But anyone who is at all realistic would realize that there's going to be some bloodshed. Some people thought, many people thought, oh, it's going to be over in a few weeks. Yeah, but that's on both sides. Well, it took a little over 4 years, actually. And immense amount of bloodshed, 10, 11 million people, mainly soldiers dead. But there was a lot of starvation or malnutrition at the very least in the mainland of Europe, continent part of Europe. Yeah. So no, you can't. Well, you can, but then I'm going to make judgments. I'm going to draw my conclusions. I don't draw my gun, but I do draw my conclusions when you start talking stupid like A.D. Harvey. There definitely was a better side, and that was the English and to a certain extent the French side, not the Russian side, in World War I. The Germans had a horrible record. I think they basically wiped out the Herreros in the southern part of Africa. They had a little beginnings of an empire in Africa in various places. Cameroons, Tanganyika, as it was then called, is now the main part of Tanzania or Tanzania. Southwest Africa, I don't know what it's called now, but yeah. And so they wiped a whole nation out. In my childhood it was called the Herrera, apparently. Yeah, so they were nasty brutes. The French were trying to have a democracy. The English had a pretty good and stable democracy. And the Germans had an empire with an emperor. Yeah, they had kind of like, maybe the beginnings of parliamentary government, but rudimentary, not much power. And ultimately, like halfway through the war, the military bureaucrats, and bureaucrats are bad enough, but military bureaucrats are nasty. Von Hindenburg, who ultimately put Hitler in power, he eventually became, I think it was Chancellor, and he put Hitler in power 33. And even worse is von Ludendorff. I should have said von Hindenburg, but I don't like that designation, von. It indicates nobility. But I'm going to say, I think it's von Ludendorff, but we'll call him Ludendorff. He was such a nasty brute that he actually joined in the early 20s the Nazi Party. I believe he joined. He was definitely marching with them when Hitler pulled his little Munich beer hall putsch. I believe it was in 1922 or 23. Ludendorff was marching with them. And he led Germany, the latter part of, not just the army, but Germany, he and Hindenburg, latter part of World War I. And the soldiers who were sent to put down, soldiers and various other, maybe the police as well, were sent down to suppress the beer hall putsch. They were so respectful or something like that of Ludendorff. Ludendorff, they were in the streets of Munich, and when the soldiers came out, all the Nazis took cover except Ludendorff. He kept marching down the street, and the soldiers were afraid to shoot him. But there you go. That's the kind of guy who was leading Germany, co-leading Germany in the latter part of World War I. And this guy equates, like he doesn't say too much about Ludendorff by comparison with Lloyd George. Lloyd George is a Welsh wizard, and he's a warmonger, according to... He's just stupid. What I'm saying is lots of knowledge, no wisdom. Just seems to be totally I don't want to overstate the case, but totally lacking. I'm not even going to say seems to be, totally lacking in wisdom. Just can't apply what he's got all this book learning, but he can't apply it. He seems to have this attitude, that democracies are They're bad, they're corrupt. He doesn't have much good to say about FDR. I'll be talking about FDR in a little while. FDR is the greatest, one of the greatest leader of any modern democracy, aside from the founders of British democracy, William III of Orange, who brought democracy and the Glorious Revolution to England, George Washington, and I actually think FDR was a greater leader than William of Orange. George Washington, and Washington, like FDR, did two major things in his political career, well, in his lifetime. Because initially it wasn't so much a political career. He beat the English, he was a war leader, and then he set up I'm not going to say an eternal, but an enduring democracy in the United States. Whereas aside from William of Orange, I maybe have to say the same thing about William of Orange, because he set up an enduring democracy in England, as well as winning a war. It was an easy war to win. He didn't have to fight any stuff in England. He fought the Battle of Boyne in Ireland. But what FDR did was he took the worst economic crisis of the 20th century, and maybe ever, the stock market crash in the United States and the world, and the Great Depression, and he brought it out of the toilet in, you can't call it record time, because the world, so far as I know, has never gone into the toilet that badly as it went between 1929, late 29, and to the end of 1932. 31, 3 years. When you look at the actual charts, I mean, I could be saying, oh, it's just awful, all that sort of stuff. I look at the charts. I look at the economic charts. And the stock market was at 1/5 of the level when FDR came in early 1933, as it was when it crashed. I think it was in November sometime, 1929. 1/5 of the level. Check it up if you don't believe me. It's best not to believe me. But don't go around being cynical and not checking things up and saying, oh, that guy's got to be wrong, because his beliefs don't coincide with mine. Check it up. Check it up. 1/5 of the level. You will get right-wingers, supporters of the Republicans and stuff like that. Oh, the Republicans were just turning the economy around. Well, the stats, the charts, don't bear that silly contention out at all. From your point of view, you'll see the economy going like this, into 1933, and then going down steeply, going up steeply. Now they're still in depression because they were still in the toilet, but it's coming out of the toilet fast. That's FDR. Now they were calling him a communist. People were gunning literally to kill him. And so what he did after he was elected the second time, and he's re-elected in 36, 37, he tried a little bit more right-wing panaceas and stuff like that. You look at the charts. So it goes like this, and he's going, that ain't working. It's looking like what was happening between 29 and 33. I'm turning that around. And he did. And that lasted about 1 year. Very steep, very deep. It was steep both sides. And then it's coming up steeply up till 37, up until the beginning of World War II, steeply. When you look at this huge height the economy had achieved in 1929, you'll see, in essence, FDR had brought it back to that, coming out of horrible economic times, unemployment deflation and stuff like that. He'd got it almost to the same level in 39 at the beginning of World War II, as it was in 29 when it hit this, what everyone thinks is a huge peak. This is the actual stats. It's not me making it up. So you'll get commies saying, and their fellow travelers, their Sputniks, saying, oh, what saved the American economy was war spending. Okay. No, there wasn't much war spending going on, at least for American arms, because I don't think the British were arming that much. I don't think the French were, actually. The Germans were, but I think they were doing most of their rearming themselves. No, 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 no. Now the American economy kept on recovering, even though during World War II. You don't really recover your economy by, you might decrease unemployment, especially if you're putting people in army. If you're spending on military stuff. But guess what? That really doesn't help out your economy. Why? You know, like even like if you're putting missiles in the ground, you're just burying your money there, and it's not like money. You dig it up and you can actually use it again. You're just wasting your money. Same thing when you put stuff in arms, particularly when you're using them. You're blowing up bombs there. All that is economic waste. It doesn't help your economy out aside from keeping people employed. But you got to pay people real money when they're employed. In essence, you're paying them. It's like you're paying them, but you're not paying them with real money. They've got to be producing goods that can be recycled back to them, stuff that they can consume. You can't consume a bomb. You try to consume a bomb, and you end up 6 feet under. Yeah. Anyway, this guy's pardon my French, a freaking bozo. Just every case, the bad guys are no worse than the good guys, because the good guys want to fight. I don't think the British were terribly thrilled about fighting Napoleon. I don't think FDR was really terribly thrilled about fighting the Germans. He wanted to fight them once they showed their true colors, black, white, and red. Red all over in the form of blood. He wanted to take them on before they took over all of Europe. If they'd taken over all of Europe, all those isolationists in the United States would have been saying, hey, the whole rest of the world's up against us. What are we going to do now? Save us, FDR. Absolutely crazy. So stop the crazy, all you stupid left-wingers. I'll be talking more. I've got another book about Helms. Richard Helms, Dick Helms, head of the CIA. And the person writing that book, Thomas Powers, published that book in 1979, I believe. Has all sorts of bad things to say about the CIA. Every so occasionally says, well, you know, the commies were bad too. No, the commies were worse, way worse. And this includes horrible, hey guys, how's it going?
I'm good.
Yeah. Nice dog there. What's its name?
Fozzie?
Fozzie.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what's that short for?
It's full name.
Okay, there we go. Anyway, take care, guys. Anyway, where was I? Talking about, yeah, Dick Helms. So, saying that the Americans were as bad as the commies. Well, maybe worse. But, yeah, like, this involved Canada. I think it was McGill University, one of the most prestigious, traditionally, maybe the most prestigious university in Canada. The CIA paying a professor there to do experiments, I think, involving LSD and people who were having mental problems or something like that. Horrible. people involved with the CIA should have been put in prison for life for doing that sort of stuff. I don't think anything happened. I don't know what happened to that professor. I think he's been long dead, but I don't think Canada did anything about him. The United States really couldn't. Whatever, he's a horrible brute. And the people involved in that program, from the CIA's point of view, were horrible brutes too. But, you know, like at the same time, the commies were putting people in mental institutions. If they were dissidents, they were still putting people into work camps. I don't know how much they were working them to death. Concentration camps, labor camps, and stuff like that. In China, labor camps. I think this is the late 50s, early 60s. CIA was doing this. What Mao was doing in China was absolutely stunning. There's no comparison between what the CIA did at its very worst and what the Soviets did even on an average day. The Soviets and the commies in China. And hold on to your seatbelts, folks. You big fans of Fidel Castro and Ho Chi Minh. The CIA was as nothing by comparison with the Secret Service and other institutions of suppression and so-called intelligence in Cuba and Vietnam and other places in the world. Fidel Castro killed, from one source that I've got, 50,000 dissidents in the 60s. Got that? 50,000. Now, how many dissidents? Now, this is domestic. We're not talking about when he sent people over to Angola, and I think he sent some to Mozambique. We're not talking about the atrocities his troops would have committed there. We're talking about domestic. So how many dissidents on a much larger population base, understand, in the United States, did the various institutions, FBI, CIA, DIA, NSA, NSC, Office of Naval Intelligence, how many did they kill in the United States? 50,000. Now, on a population basis, like if you looking at percentage, it would have to be more than 50,000, way more, like 10 times that number, to get the comparable impact on society as Fidel Castro's atrocities in Cuba got. 10 times? 10 times would be 100 million. 30 times. Let's say 20 times. 20 times 50, like 200 million. United States population maybe back in the 60s. Wow, 20 times 50,000 is 100,000 times 10. Wow, that's 1 million people. 1 million dissidents killed in the 60s in the United States. Now, in some confrontations with the police, a few Black Panthers got wiped out. My attitude is, if you get in confrontations with the police, all other things being equal, I'm not saying you deserve to get wiped out, but maybe you should expect it. Parading around the streets, showing off arms and stuff like that. What's that about? Doesn't help the average population, that's for certain. They kind of get a little antsy about it. And rightly so. But 1 million? Would you even have 100? Even 1,000? That's 1/1,000th. You get some idiot, useful idiot, like Noam Chomsky. I don't think he's even a commie. I think he's an anarchist. I don't know what he is. He's just a complainer. He's got that upside down clown's face. You know, he's got the constant frown on his face. Someone should tell him, like, get a smile. You know, like, someone should paste one of those goofy looking smile icons on his face. How much time? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, people might listen to him a little bit more. He's got this, like, the United States, we have to be 10 times better than our opposition, than our enemy. 10 times better? You've just got to be even twice as good is good enough for me. When you're fighting people like the commies, like the Nazis, like the Muslims, frankly. You look at what the response to, this is domestic, to 9/11. I'm proud of the Americans, I'm telling you. Because I can remember, one of the first things that happened was a guy got killed. A guy wearing a turban. Turned out he was a Sikh, or a Sikh as we mispronounce it. And that was awful. But I don't know how unbalanced the person was. It wasn't a plot to go out and kill a bunch of people wearing turbans. It was just one person who was unbalanced. That's the response to almost 3,000 people getting killed in the 9/11 sorts of things. Let's look what happens in the real world. The Americans were amazingly peaceful, pacific, when these warlike Americans in the response to 9/11. I'm talking about domestically. Let's look at what happened in India when 47 or so people got burned in a rail car. Burned up in a rail car. Response to a celebration held at Ayodhya, or whatever the name is, a holy site for Hindus. They're coming back from the celebration. They stop in a railway station somewhere, and Muslims proceed to burn them, to fry them. Send them to hell early by putting them through hell. Okay? 47. What was the response in India? 3,000 dead. 3,000. 300 would be 6 times 50. 3,000 is 60 times 50. If the Americans had the same response to 9/11, to the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, and Flight 93 or whatever it was that ended up in Pennsylvania or whatever, field in Pennsylvania, they would have killed 60 times 3,000, which is what? 180,000 people in response. You see how Pacific Americans traditionally have been? No, you don't, most of you people, but that's your problem. 180,000 as opposed to 1. Are you listening, Noam Chomsky? If the Americans had been 10 times better than their Muslim fundamentalist adversaries, they would have killed 300 Muslims. 1 Sikh died. They're 300 times better than your requirements, you stupid putz. Okay, I'll have more to say about this sort of stuff. So Noam, you stay tuned if you're still alive, you useless idiot. You should have died of embarrassment a long time ago. Well, there's a Cadillac running through the neighborhood. Definitely don't live in a Cadillac neighborhood, but there we go. Be talking more about Winston's strategy here, stuff like that. But I'm wanting to hit these tacos before the flies totally fly speck them. So, yeah. Till next time, folks. I don't know how to turn off the camera, so I'm not going to. So you don't want to be subjected to me. The sight of me chomping down on this stuff. You lucky folks.